From scientificamerican.com, new species of giant goose discovered in Australia. From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, and if you love talking about animals, share this show with everyone you know. You can catch new videos throughout the day at Creature Guide Live on Rumble and YouTube. Now, let's get into the animal news of the day. Let's take a look at this 500-pound goose that we have in Australia. This seems to be a member of the Dromaeosaurids over in Australia. So these animals first evolved somewhere around 25 million years ago in the Oligocene epoch, or at least at the very end of this time period. And they ended up going extinct around 11,000 years ago. So they ranged at somewhere between a couple hundred pounds to close to a ton. So this is specifically Genyornis newtoni. Um, hmm. Yes, certain species of these giant geese. Well, in quote. These weren't specifically true geese, but these animals would have fed on different species of aquatic vegetation. You could say occasionally that they're intaking different invertebrates as well, but for the most part, they were herbivorous, so not going after any large game in the area. Also, specifically, if this is Genyornis, some of these animals lived somewhere around 9 million years ago. So this was also at the very start of the Pliocene, towards the start of the Pliocene epoch and the end of the Miocene epoch. Just 50,000 years ago, giants roamed the Australian continent, including a wombat relative to the size of a rhinoceros, a monitor lizard as long as a crocodile. So the wombat, okay, technically not a wombat. So let's move over to here. This is Diprotodon. So it's a member of the Vombatomorph lineage or order of mammals, or specifically marsupials. But it has been stated often that it's a wombat. But the truth is that its closest relatives today are wombats and koalas, but they belong to a completely different family of mammals, the Diprotodontidae. No, Diprotodontidae, which also consists of several other different species of Vombatomorph that look quite similar to Diprotodon. Now, Diprotodon was also the largest of this lineage of marsupials. Diprotodon could reach somewhere around 8,000 pounds. So it was one of the largest marsupials to exist. Was probably quite herbivorous, feeding on a variety of different species of grasses in different parts of Queensland. So this animal did inhabit eastern Australia just 70,000 years ago. And the monitor lizard, the size of a crocodile it's talking about, is the giant megalania. So it's possible that now and then megalania might have hunted animals like Diprotodon, as well as the giant kangaroos that existed within Australia. Heavyset kangaroo, probably talking about animals such as Procoptodon. So a 530-pound short-faced kangaroo. And then the marsupial lion, technically not a lion, it would have been a marsupial called Thylacoleo. So more closely related to the, well, now extinct thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, in quote. And now researchers have uncovered and reconstructed the skull of a 6 foot, 6.5 foot tall, 500-pound flightless bird that they've nicknamed the Giga Goose, resolving more than a century of speculation about this species' ancestry. In 1893, camel riding paleontologists dug up a nearly complete skeleton of a massive bird that tens of thousands of years prior had gotten itself mirrored or mired in the mud of Lake Callabona in South Australia. While its body was remarkably preserved, its fossil skull was very dodgy, crumbly, crushed, and distorted, says Phoebe McInerney, an evolutionary biologist who recently received a PhD from Flinders University. So, when referring to the family in which this giant goose, you could say, even though it was not a true goose, belonged to the Dromornithids. So around 9 million years ago, also hosted even larger individuals. Genyornis was not even close to the largest animal of this family of birds. This is Dimornis. So Dimornis could reach a height of over 8 feet and possibly weigh close to around 800 pounds. Sometimes these animals are also referred to as the demon ducks or the thunderbirds. But this individual has, or sometimes is referred to as a duck, even though it's not true duck. True ducks and geese belong to another family of birds, but that derive from the same major order of birds in which the Dromornithids derive from. So technically, their true ancestors evolved somewhere around 67, 68 million years ago during the last couple million years of the late Cretaceous period. So the Dromornids also, for the most part, were quite herbivorous. So this seems to have, or you would possibly assume at first that this was carnivorous and munching on any small mammals within the region, even medium sized, like sometimes horses in this case. But the truth is, with many chemical isotopes being done on different species of these giant prehistoric, sometimes called terror birds, in many cases they come out being herbivorous because it was long suggested that these were carnivores. Many of these animals did not have um, the skeletal structure, just the overall anatomy to be quick, like what you see in today's ostriches, emus. There were a couple of terror bird groups that were carnivorous, but most of them were probably gentle animals, as long as you didn't threaten them. Without a clear picture of its head, many scientists assume that this bird, called Genyornis newtoni, was a mega version of the emu, an ostrich like flightless retite that roams Australia today. Others thought it was a type of landfowl like a chicken, but those were only guesses. All big birds look roughly similar from the neck down, explains. Regardless of a bird's evolutionary lineage, when the body gets large and flightless, all the same things happen. She says stumpy wings, a broad rump, bulky legs. Yeah, it is a big question as to what their smaller wings would have been used for. Though um, Genyornis seemed to have bit larger arms compared to its body size, unlike most of the Dromornithids. The skull is what will retain those more complex family indicators. So, for the last 120 or so years, we have been looking for better skull fossils. And now McCurney and her colleagues at Flinders have found them. In a paper published on Monday in Historical Biology, the researchers describe and diagram a complete Gyornis skull, plus a collection of beautifully preserved partial skulls they unearthed at Lake Callabona between 2013 and 2019. Seeing the skull fully out of the matrix and free from the dirt around it was definitely a wow event, McInerney says. We weren't really sure what to expect, and we kept finding new parts of the skull that were hidden within. So here's a hideous Geniornis skull. I mean, it's interesting, but I've never considered geese to be, adorable, especially their older relatives. Let's see. So there's also an earlier relative of the Dromaeosaurids, but this is a member of the Gastromorph lineage of giant birds in the Cenozoic and lived much earlier. So around 61 million years ago, back in the Paleocene epoch of different parts of Europe and Asia, even North America, you had animals like Gastornis, which was also assumed to be carnivorous originally. And there have been many chemical isotopes done on Gastornis, showing that there was practically no evidence for it being carnivorous. And it's usually been, or used to be, depicted hunting smaller mammals in the region, especially smaller species of squirrel or even anteater like animals, certain small horses. But in reality, this animal was probably feeding on a wide range of different species of fruits, seeds, occasionally even leaves, not going after small mammals. So it was probably quite gentle. Gastornis could reach a height, depending on the species, of somewhere around 6.5 feet and might have weighed somewhere around 250 pounds. So it was quite a heavily built creature. Um, well, okay, depending on like the larger species. Now, so yes, this could have been in France somewhere around 61 million years ago. Fossils revealed a unique face quite different from any other living or extinct bird, but most similar to a duck or a goose. This suggests Genyornis belongs in the Anasauriformes, an order of birds also called waterfowl, ranging from ducks to swans to South America's screamers. Well, yeah, in Seriformes, it's a massive order of birds, so it's nothing too specific. There's no close analog for these birds. Um, do, do, do. They are a truly unique Australian island experiment, as unique as koalas and kangaroos. With this amazing new discovery, we can now actually start to reconstruct the evolution and the behavior of this animal. See who else? Oh, okay. So this was if we're referring to Nimbledon, this would have existed with later Dromaeonorthids. But this is actually a species more closely related to the Diprotodon, from a different family of the Vombatomorphs, though. It was actually also quite arboreal. So it is related to wombats and koalas, but it's a bit off in the family tree and belongs to entirely different family of marsupials. This animal was somewhere around 150 pounds, but was quite arboreal, probably fed on a wide variety of different species of leaves and occasionally going after possibly fruits. So it had almost bit different, but a bit of a koala or even tree kangaroo like lifestyle. There was also the Silva bestius, which inhabited the Pleistocene epoch, so over 300,000 years ago. And this von Bactomorph was barely 80 pounds and was also, whoops, no, not you. Was primarily terrestrial. So it wasn't arboreal at all and just walked along the ground. It was also barely 3 feet in length and fed on a wide variety of different grasses in eastern Australia. So the wide gap, strong bite, and muscle attachments of Genyornis' beak suggest it had fine motor control, leading the researchers to speculate that the bird fed by tearing leaves and fruit from waterside plants. Hmm. Yeah, so even with Genyornis, looks like it was quite herbivorous. The skull fossils also revealed adaptations for aquatic habitats, such as structures that prevented water from entering the ears. Further evidence that this was essentially a gigantic goose that relied on freshwater habitats. Um, yeah, so it's kind of like with the different species of in quote terror bird, and many will assume even for me, occasionally I'll think of a predatory Cenozoic bird, but in reality, most of them or majority were quite herbivorous. And um, it's like we're saying gigantic goose, it's not actually a goose. Aboriginal Australians likely encountered Guineornis. Oh, was I mixing it up with some other genus? I must have been. Okay, my mistake. Or wait a second, or the author was off on this. That can happen. Um, wait a second. What did they enter? Okay. Giant birds. I'm not exactly sure when the Aboriginals entered Australia. Something seems very off with his timing. It could have been as far back as possibly 40 40,000 years ago. But that was right as when most of the megafauna, not all of it, but most of it went extinct in Australia. So animals like Diprotodon, not you. Okay. Um, this animal had gone extinct by that point. Giant kangaroos. So, giant birds feature in rock art and stories. And there's a word for giant emu in at least one Aboriginal language. Some researchers have interpreted fragments of massive burned eggshells as evidence that humans cooked and ate Genyornis eggs, but the identity of the shells remains controversial. Also, there was the different species of elephant bird. They used to inhabit different parts of Madagascar as well as different parts of Oceania, like the moa. Now, the moa is actually one of several different species, and also some might confuse the ostrich with the moa bird, well, or the emu. And none of the birds today, the larger terrestrial birds like the emu, are closely related to the moa. They belong to a different family of the larger birds. And the moas, this might be a smaller species, but the elephant bird itself could reach a weight of, some cases, 2,500 pounds, is how massive the animal was, and possibly stand somewhere around 9 to 10 feet in height. Was also quite herbivorous, so they would have fed on a wide variety of grasses, seeds, possibly fruits. However, they still had to be careful with different types of carnivores in the region. Even Thylacoleo, the marsupial and quote lion, would have hunted it, as well as the Haas eagle. So the Haas eagle um, probably went after smaller individuals, unless it got a direct hit on the neck, and maybe even the larger species couldn't withstand the pressure. Haas eagle weighed somewhere around 40 pounds and had a 9-foot long wingspan. So, close to the size of the longest wingspans of today's birds, but definitely longer than any eagle in existence today. Um, when it comes to animals like even the bald eagle, I believe they get to somewhere around 12 pounds. Yeah, maybe slightly larger, but that's a decent sized eagle. But the Haas eagle would have also preyed on other marsupials within the region, not just the bird. It's just usually depicted hunting moas. Also, when it comes to the moa's extinction, many will try to blame places like England for the extinction of the moa. And the truth is that this animal had already gone extinct on the Australian mainland 300 years before colonization. So it's still a big question as to why they went extinct. So scientists are still debating why Australia's megafauna vanished. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, also today, Lake Callabona is mostly dry, salty, and treeless. No place for a water-loving giga goose. Yeah, it is true. Massive climate changes, ecological change throughout Australia that has occurred since then. So it simply does not host the vegetation that is needed to fuel larger animals. Um, Now, something like Halbidon, maybe it could eke a living because about the size of a common wombat. Common wombats get to around 80, they can reach around 80 to 90 pounds. And Silvobestius. Yeah, this picture makes it look much larger than it actually is. But in reality, it probably didn't reach much more than the weight of the common wombat. So glad we found this specimen within Australia. Let me know in the comments what your favorite prehistoric species of marsupial or even giant bird is in the comments. From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, and if you love talking about animals, share this show with everyone you know. You can catch new episodes throughout the day at Creature Guide Live on Rumble and YouTube. Don't forget to catch our animal documentary commentary live stream on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Central on Rumble because nothing is better than all animals all the time.